Hello and welcome to this pit stop for Cerebria, the Inside World, designed by Viktor Peter and Richard Amann and coming from Mindclash Games. In Cerebria, the players will be taking the part of two different teams attempting to mould a growing mind from birth through to full revelation and growing up. And we're going to have gloom and we're going to have bliss. And they're going to be attempting to carry out their intentions and match their aspirations to build this identity in order to have the most points at the end of the game. Now, the teams alternate in play, one after another going. If you haven't got four players, one for each, then someone will just control more than one. And on a player's turn, they get to take 3 actions, and there are 10 available actions in the game. Now, the first 5 come from your own board. Now, each player is going to choose to be a spirit. There are 4 for each team, and each spirit has got their own individual powers. And when you're used to the game, you can flip this over and they'll have their own individual versions of actions. But we're just going to look at the basic actions to start with. And to start with, you have to move around the board. All of your actions can be powered by this willpower, which you need to have to spend. So for example, to do a basic move, you're going to spend 1 willpower, put it back in the pool, and you can move 1 space. Now the spaces are associated with these realms that look like this. They've got 2 card slots in them, or these frontier spaces which have got 1 card slot but are affected by all the cards within this triad. And you can choose where to put your spirit in order to influence things. Now, whenever you choose any of these actions, you can choose to power them up by discarding one of the cards in your hand. Each spirit has got an individual deck of emotions. There are basic emotion decks, which each team, the players have got the same. There are suggested ones for each of the spirits, or when you get very used to the game, you can just build your own deck and there'll be 8 different emotions in there and 2 copies of each. You can throw one away because they all have these vibe associations to them. And when you throw them away for a vibe, you look at the color up here and you take that color vibe token and you can power up the action you're about to take. For example, for that move, I can usually only move 1 space. If I powered up here by spending an additional willpower, I could move 2 spaces. Or I can't usually stop where an opponent's figure is, but if I powered up that particular section, I could. Or I could make it 1 crystal cheaper to do this move action, but only in total. So I could spend in 0 or 1 or 2, whatever it may be. And each of these have got different ways of powering up. The only restriction being I couldn't then throw away subsequently another one of the same color and power up the same power. I'd have to use one of the different colored vibe tokens to start powering up my tokens like that. Anyway, that's move. We're going to move around the board and put ourselves in particular slots in order to influence what is going on the board. The next thing we can do is invoke these emotions. And by spending 2 of our willpower, we get to put a card into play. And when we put cards into play, they all have individual powers, all the emotions, which is one of the reasons why you might want to build your deck or look through your deck to work out what you can do. For example, by putting this optimism down, we have to put 1 essence from our board and we put it down. We have to pay the willpower to do it. It's going to give us a strength according to how much essence is on this, and it's going to help us to control this particular realm. And also, if it's in a triad spot, which they will be, it's going to help you to control a frontier, which will come into play when we try to absorb some willpower here from the center. So these emotions will come into play and they all have individual effects. For example, this guilt up here means that those guys are going to earn some willpower every time we invoke a card. Or sociability, we get to put an extra essence on it every time it's next to another positive emotion, and so on and so forth. And there are so many different effects that, trust me, I'm not going to go through it. We invoke cards to get them into play to give us strength in the 2 areas, the realms and the frontiers. Now, the other thing you can do within these realms is to fortify it. It's going to cost you 3 willpower, and then you can put one of these minor fragments into play. And what that does is, first of all, it gives you a strength in that area to boost you up should the other player start attacking your cards and putting their own cards into play. Also, this is now available for possible scoring later on when we start building up this identity here, which we will come to, don't worry. Now, I said we can attack each other. That's because you can quell other players' cards. And when you're next to them, you can attack them by spending a card which has got the same. So you can't attack this bleakness because there's no vibe on here. But we could attack this guilt over here by using this cheerfulness card because it's got the same color on there. And we could take the essence off it, either depowering it, or if we took that last essence off there, it would actually put that guilt card back into that player's deck. The last thing you can do with the 5 basic actions here is to empower. Now, each of these cards has got a major power, a major emotion, which is linked to its optimism. If we get its essence up to a certain level, we can do that when we play it by powering up or invoke power, or by another action from the realms we'll talk about. But once it gets to a certain level, by using the empower, and I'd have to activate this power, I haven't activated it yet, by doing that power up action, I could then change this into a hope card. And that hope card would come into play, and it's slightly stronger and it's got a slightly better effect. For example, optimism you can't quell if it's got to the last space, but hope you can't quell at all because you're so hopeful, obviously. Now those are the 5 actions you can do on your main board. You get 3 a turn, as I said, but there's one thing you can always do on your turn, and that is to absorb willpower from this central thing here. Now, when you absorb willpower, you're going to get 2 as a base, but by controlling these frontiers with your cards, you're going to get extra ones. So if you took them out from where you're adjacent to, if I was over here, I'd take 3 out of knowledge, and then this would spin around. If I did it here, however, I'm going to empty out this commitment, and wherever you are, there are 5 different ones. You get 5 different little bonuses, like taking extra willpower, or getting an extra essence, or getting an extra card, or what have you. If you empty it, you're going to trigger a revelation, which is one of the main ways you score in the game, which we will come back to. The 5 realms around the board all have their own actions, and as one of your actions, you can use them no matter where you are on the board, and they're going to do things like let you put the extra essence onto your cards to give them more power, or they're going to let you swap willpower for essence, or take more willpower from the supply, or let you draw more cards by spending more willpower for all the cards that you want, or by allowing you to lay down cards elsewhere across the place. And if you control a realm, it's cheaper for you. You have to pay 1 less in the willpower cost. Now, apart from these revelations, as you're going through on your turn, you've always got these intentions that you're trying to do. There are 4 of them. You can do them once per turn. And when you do the first one, you score 1 point. For each subsequent one you manage to achieve on your turn, you score 2 extra points. So you're looking to do them in batches. The first one there is to quell. So I said you can take that essence off another player's card. If you do that, you've done 1 intention and you're going to score a point for doing that. Also, when you absorb, as we were discussing, if you control both frontiers or have any other powers that help you absorb, if you take more than 4 at once, that's another intention done. If you ever power up a card by putting an essence in its last slot, that's another intention. Or if I manage to get all of my tokens on one of my powers, that is another intention done. And that will score me points during the course of the game. And one of the game end conditions is if any player ever scores up to 20 points on their intentions, that will be the last round off of the game. Now we're going to get to what the other 2 endgame conditions are, and they are linked to these revelations. So if ever one of these spaces gets emptied, we're going to look at the aspirations the players have been working towards on this phase of the game. There's this lineup of common ones, and as they get scored, they're going to flip over and we move on to the next one so we can see what's coming. And both players are working towards this. Now in this case, the first one was unity, having more adjacent emotions. And if we check the board, we can see that actually gloom has achieved this one and bliss hasn't. But on the top of Bliss's deck, and the players can look at the top one, if that's the one that's going to score next, they have a look and we see that Bliss has got liveliness, have more essence on the main board than the other player, which we actually have here. In that case, I get to add a minor fragment to the identity in the middle there of the board, and that is going to score me 3 points at the end of the game for each minor one I have. It happens in this case that Gloom, as well as achieving the public one, has also achieved their other one of awareness. They've got emotions in more triads, these frontier areas around the board. And in doing both of them, they then get to place a major fragment into the identity, and that's going to score them 5 points at the end of the game. I said there were 2 other ways in which the game ends. This will flip over and we'll move on to the next one, happens to be reflection. But if all of these flip over and we've gone through all of the public aspirations, there are 7 in the basic game or 9 in the advanced game, then that will trigger the end of the game. And again, we're going to add up our intentions points with whatever we've scored from here, 3 for minor or 5 for major, or the very last pieces, and it will be very much taller than this. But if you run out of pieces, you've got 3 major or 5 minor, you get to put your cap on there. That's worth 4 points. And that is the 3rd way in which the game will end. If the cap ever gets put on, that's the end of the game. Finish that round. And we add up our intention points, our points for being in the identity. And whoever scored the most points, controlling the board and powering up their cards, will be the winner of Cerebria. This has been a Game Pit Pit Stop. For more videos like this, check out our YouTube channel. For more in-depth coverage of gaming, please find the Game Pit podcast. Thanks.